if we actually look at what the Green Deal means on the ground, you suddenly start to see how complex this could be. And there's a number of charts here which illustrate both the structure of the Green Deal as the government envisage it and the process that they envisage every house having to go through in order to get a Green Deal solution. I should also say, having used the word house many times already, that the Green Deal isn't limited to housing. It does cover all types of buildings, so commercial buildings, exactly the same principles, exactly the same processes, a slightly different assessment method and less consumer protection, but the same idea applies. If we move on to the actual process of having a Green Deal improvement on your house, what does that look like? Well, I've divided it into two parts. The bit concerned with agreeing the deal, the Green Deal for your house, and lending you the money, or lending the money to the house to make the work happen, and then the bit about the installation. This first chart shows you the customer journey from having interest in the Green Deal, deciding you wanted to do something, to actually borrowing the money. You can see there are 5 different parties involved. The customer, the Green Deal provider, around whom the whole thing hinges. They coordinate the whole process, and that is the key role. We'll talk a bit more about them in a second. The assessor, who's responsible for doing the evaluation, which says the current energy bills of this house should be £2,500 or £1,000 or whatever, and if you do A, B and C in terms of investment, the bills afterwards will be £600 or whatever the number is there. So that's the assessment role. There's then the installer, who come into the picture when you've actually got work to do, and of course the financier as well. So this first half of the process is all about identifying for each building what are the appropriate measures that might be financed by the Green Deal that satisfy the golden rule and also satisfy the financier in terms of their willingness to fund the project. And there are a number of rules around this. The government's very open in terms of how you actually source the lead, if you like. So why does someone become interested? It might be because they're having a kitchen fitted and the kitchen installer also does Green Deals on the side. It might be because there's a campaign by a utility in your area to do a whole street and they actually come and knock on your door and start offering you the Green Deal. But as a homeowner, your decision, or the home occupier, your decision is, do I want a survey? If you do, you request the survey, and that's arranged through the assessor or the Green Deal provider. They come in, they do the work, they generate a report for you. As part of that, they're required to identify whether you're eligible for energy company obligations. So that would be a grant in some circumstances, which we'll come on to later. And they clearly identify whether you're actually entitled to borrow money for this particular house. They have to do some credit checking or similar type processes with a financial institution. You then get the report, and as part of the structure of the Green Deal, you have the right to go to other providers. So that's an important point because money's been spent, the assessment's been done, but as the homeowner, I can then go to somebody else and get them to do the work, and you won't recover the costs of doing the assessment. If the quote is over £10,000, the provider is required to go to 3 different installers to get different quotes for the work. So again, there's a built-in requirement for administration there. But hopefully at the end of all of that, we get to the point where we agree a Green Deal plan, which is something that I can sign up to as the occupier of the building to make the work happen. And that Green Deal plan is a financial offer, and therefore it has to comply with the Consumer Credit Act, and there has to be a cooling off period, so there has to be a pause. And I will just pause there as well in terms of the cost of that whole process, because there are some estimates in the Green Deal consultation that the process will cost around about £75, which is based on 3 hours of a person in the building at £25 an hour, which maybe is possible, but there are a whole range of queries around that. Does someone paid £25 an hour have the right portfolio of skills to do a really a proper assessment for all kinds of buildings? Technical people might say no, they should have a better training and therefore they cost more money. Many social landlords we've spoken to would say there's a whole range of skills which are nothing to do with energy or technology when you go in and deal with tenants, which are all about dealing with people who can be in quite difficult circumstances. So there's customer management skills there as well, and therefore you need a slightly more expensive person or more than one person to go into the building. And of course, none of the £25 times 3 allows for the costs of all the administration, management of those people, and bringing them in and out of the houses, coordinating coordinating it, etc. We did our own estimates for this, and we reckon it's about £250 if you factor all those things in, plus the costs of doing surveys, which don't actually go through to delivery. Other people I've heard estimates of £200 plus, but that seems to be the broad figure people are settling on. That cost needs to be clearly recovered somewhere. It might be through the actual work down the line, provided that's done by the same organisation. So we've now got the Green Deal done. The customer says, yes, I want to go ahead. Because that Green Deal plan's in place, you're entitled to Green Deal finance, and you can go to a financial institution who will provide that to you. The Green Deal provider, still acting as the main coordinator, will commission the installer to do the work. They will come in. They'll have to agree to do the work for that price, and clearly there's a process around that. It might be possible to get the installer to pre-agree to a price per square metre of insulation for all house types, so that that's a fixed schedule of rates, if you like, for work. But on many micro-renewables and the more complicated retrofit projects, we've always found the installer will want to do their own survey, so there might be a repeated process there, and clearly scope for installer to say, no, I'm not going to do that property, you've missed key factors that would affect my costs, so I'm not happy about that. There's an element of risk involved. But in principle, all goes smoothly. The installer's happy, the Green Deal provider gives the go-ahead, and the measures are installed. If there is a problem during the installation, so supposing you discover asbestos or damp or something else which needs rectifying, that might cost far more than the works. The person in the building has the right to stop the work and say, I didn't want to incur that cost at the moment, I wasn't aware of it, I don't have the money, I can't fund it, so please stop, go away, leave the house as you find it. And according to the way the Green Deal is structured at the moment, the Green Deal installer, the provider, has to do that and leave the house as they found it. And again, that's a cost and a risk that will be borne by the supply chain delivering into that house. Again, if all goes well, the work's done, the deal's completed, the installer's happy because they've been paid, and the Green Deal provider now just has the problem of recovering the money over the 10 years from the finance company. So that process is managed between the utilities and the Green Deal provider and the finance company in the background, and the bill payer is simply responsible for paying the bill, and the energy company separates out the payments and feeds them back to the relevant parties. So we're there, the Green Deal's done, everyone's happy, and on we go. That's the theory. But you can begin to see where there's an awful lot of risks in here, and it's not yet clear who's picking them up and whether those costs can actually be borne within the whole parameters of this golden rule. And those are really the key issues for the next 6 months in terms of sorting this out. And they can have a big impact on whether you want to be a Green Deal provider or an installer or not, whether you're going to steer clear. And they may well have a big impact on whether you want to be a Green Deal customer, in fact, of course.